Disneyland opened in 1955. Within a few years, people on 3 continents looked at what Walt Disney had built and decided they could do it too. Some were dreamers, some were con men, most of them failed. Over the next 7 stops, you will meet a half-built fairy tale castle marooned in a Chinese cornfield for 15 years, never open a single day. A Christian theme park that sent its own founder to federal prison. An East Coast Disneyland shaped like a map of the United States that may have been a real estate trick all along. Make sure you stick with us to the end, because number 1 is a near-perfect bootleg of Disneyland. Sealed behind barbed wire, left to rot for 10 years, rides intact and lights dead, waiting in the hills of Japan like a horror set. This is the channel where we walk through the places the world built and then abandoned. If you have not subscribed, do it now. We find a new one every week. Today we are counting down 7 theme parks that tried to copy Disney and failed. Number 7, Camelot in Lancashire, England, the kingdom that rusted. The theme was King Arthur. The centerpiece was a white fairy tale castle. The thing that finally killed it was the English weather. Camelot opened in 1983 on flat farmland off the M6 motorway. For most of its life, it did fine. A mid-sized fantasy park reaching for the fairy tale formula that made Disney a fortune, pulling around 500,000 visitors a year. But it could never keep pace with Britain's bigger parks. Attendance slid to 336,000 by 2005, even after a £3 million coaster called Nightmare went in. Then came 2012. The operator blamed a wet summer, the London Olympics, and the Queen's Diamond Jubilee for keeping people home. After 29 seasons, they closed the gates for good. Nightmare was one of only 3 coasters of its kind in the world. After the park closed, it just stood there. For roughly 8 years, urban explorers kept climbing its 80-foot lift hill, until it was finally torn down in 2020. The site is mostly cleared now. In 2024, it reopened for a few weeks as a Halloween horror attraction called Scare City. A fairy tale kingdom that couldn't survive a British summer finally found its crowd, people who pay to be frightened by the ruins. Number 6. Hard Rock Park in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Dead in one summer. It opened in April 2008. By September, it was bankrupt. This was not a small operation. Hard Rock Park was marketed as a roughly $400 million project, though much of that was financing, with the actual build closer to $225 million. It had more than 50 music-themed attractions, 5 roller coasters, and a ride built around Led Zeppelin. The Hard Rock name alone cost $2.5 million a year in licensing fees. Opening weekend featured the Eagles and the Moody Blues. The bet was simple. Myrtle Beach draws millions of tourists every summer, and the developers figured a slick music-themed destination could play in the same league as the Disney and Universal resorts down in Florida. They were counting on 20,000 to 30,000 visitors a day. Then the timing turned on them. The park opened straight into the 2008 housing crash, with gas near $4 a gallon, and the road trip crowd it depended on stayed home. Daily attendance came in at a fraction of the projection. 5 months in, it filed for bankruptcy. A second owner bought the whole thing out of bankruptcy for $25 million, renamed it Freestyle Music Park, and reopened in 2009. That version lasted exactly 1 season too. The rides were eventually dismantled and sold off, some of them reportedly shipped all the way to a park in Vietnam. The coasters are still running, just not in South Carolina. Number 5. Mirapolis. Outside Paris, France, the giant they blew up. At the center of this park stood a colossal statue of Gargantua, the giant from French folklore, big enough to see from miles away. When the park failed, the statue refused to go quietly. In the end, they had to take it down with dynamite. Mirapolis was France's first big theme park, and it was built with a point to prove. In the late 1980s, Disney was negotiating to build Euro Disney just outside Paris. A French architect named Anne Fourcade wanted to get there first with something different, a park rooted in French literature and fables instead of American cartoons, a cultural answer to the mouse. It was not cheap. Backed by a Saudi businessman, the project reportedly cost around $600 million, and the 1987 opening drew the Prime Minister, Jacques Chirac himself. It went wrong almost immediately. The layout was so sprawling that visitors got annoyed walking between rides. And during the first season, workers from rival fairgrounds reportedly sabotaged the place, handing out thousands of fake tickets and breaking in to damage the attractions. Mirapolis never turned a profit. When Disneyland Paris opened in 1932, the contest was over. The rides were sold off to parks across the Netherlands, Germany, and Belgium. The site is cleared now, down to a few paths and a small lake. The park died in 1991. The giant held out until 1995. Then they blew him up too. Number 4. Freedomland, USA, in the Bronx, New York. The Disneyland of the East. From the air, it was shaped like a map of the United States. The whole park, 85 acres of it, laid out in the rough outline of the contiguous 48 states. There was an old Southwest. There was a section where, every 20 minutes, visitors could help put out the Chicago fire. The only problem with building a park shaped like a map is that no visitor ever sees it from above. Here's where it gets stranger. Freedomland was conceived and built by C.V. Wood, a Texan who had helped plan and build the original Disneyland, and, by some accounts, was its first employee. After a bitter split with Walt Disney, Wood took everything he had learned and went east. He built his version on Bronx marshland owned by a developer named William Zeckendorf, and when it opened in 1960, it was billed as the largest entertainment center in the world. The Disneyland of the East. It lasted 5 seasons. Crowds came at first, then shrank every year. The location was awkward, the costs were brutal, and when the 1964 World's Fair opened across town, it pulled away whatever was left. Freedomland declared bankruptcy and closed in 1964. But the real story is what happened to the land. It became Co-op City, a massive housing development that stands there today. Years later, the developer Zeckendorf admitted that the park had essentially been a device, a way to hold that swampy land, and to prove it could support apartment towers until the permits came through. Today, there is nothing left but a small plaque, placed by fans in 2013, marking where the entrance gate once stood. It may be the only Disneyland ever built to fail, and it did exactly what it was supposed to. If you are enjoying this so far, drop a thumbs up. It genuinely helps these stories reach more people. And tell me in the comments which of these failures surprises you most. We read them all. We are about halfway through, and the stories only get darker from here. The next one sent a man to prison. Number 3. Heritage USA in Fort Mill, South Carolina. The Christian Disneyland that sent its founder to prison. At its peak, this was the 3rd most visited theme park in America. Only Disneyland and Walt Disney World drew bigger crowds, and then its founder went to federal prison. Heritage USA was the work of Jim and Tammy Faye Backer, televangelists, who hosted a hugely popular show called the PTL Club, Praise the Lord. In 1978, flush with television money, they set out to build a wholesome, faith-based version of the Disney formula, an all-in-one Christian resort. It grew to roughly 2,300 acres, with a hotel, a water park, a shopping complex, a campground, and its own television studios. The problem was how they paid for it. To fund the constant expansion, the backers sold what they called lifetime partnerships. Memberships that promised buyers a few free nights a year, forever. They sold tens of thousands of them, far more than the resort could ever honor. In 1987, it all came apart. A sex scandal cover-up surfaced, and with it, the financial fraud. Jerry Falwell briefly took over and found the ministry losing millions of dollars a week. In 1989, Jim Backer was convicted on 24 counts of fraud and conspiracy, and sentenced to 45 years. He served about 5 before being paroled. That same year, Hurricane Hugo tore through the grounds, and the park closed for good. The signature image of the whole era came earlier, at the height of the boom. Jerry Falwell in a business suit riding the park's giant water slide on a dare to donors, fully dressed, soaked, and grinning for the cameras. Parts of the site have been repurposed by a church ministry. Much of the rest just sits there, decaying in the South Carolina woods. He sold more nights than the place could ever hold. That arithmetic is what built the kingdom, and that arithmetic is what put him in a cell. Number 2. Wonderland, outside Beijing, China. The castle in the Cornfield. It was supposed to be the largest amusement park in all of Asia. It never opened a single ride. In the mid-1990s, a Thai-Chinese developer called the Rainwood Group announced a 120-acre fairy tale park about 20 miles northwest of Beijing, in a farming village called Chenjuang. The plan was openly modeled on Disney, right down to a centerpiece castle built to echo the Sleeping Beauty and Cinderella castles. With tens of millions of people in reach of the capital, the developers expected to outdraw and outsize anything Disney had. Construction started, the frame of the castle went up, and a fake medieval town rose around it. And then, around 1998, it all stopped. The money ran out, the deal with local officials collapsed, and the site was simply abandoned mid-build. A revival attempt in 2008 went nowhere, so it sat. For 15 years, the skeleton of a castle loomed over the fields while local farmers planted crops right up to its base. The half-finished ruin became a symbol of how fast Chinese money could rise and then vanish. In 2013, it was finally demolished, and a shopping outlet went up nearby. For all those years, the visitors who wandered out to see it reported the strangest detail of all. There were still parking attendants, tending an empty lot for a park that never came. 15 years, and the only people who ever worked there were guarding cars that never arrived. Number 1. Nara Dreamland in Japan. The bootleg Disneyland frozen in time. You come up through wooded hills on the edge of an ancient temple city, and there it is behind the fence. A main street. A castle, the Sleeping Beauty Castle, almost exactly. Beyond it, a mountain with a wooden roller coaster wrapped around its slopes. The way the Matterhorn sits at the heart of the real thing. The gates are chained, the paint is peeling. Grass pushes up through the midway. There is no music, no crowd, no sound at all but wind moving through rusted track. Everything is still here. The rides, the signs, the ticket booths. And none of it has moved in years. The people who got inside described filming it by flashlight and calling it a ready-made horror set. Now the story. In the 1950s, a Japanese businessman named Kunizo Matsuo visited the brand new Disneyland in California and came home determined to build one of his own. He did the honest thing first. He negotiated with Walt Disney for an official Japanese park. But the licensing terms fell apart over fees, and the deal collapsed. So Matsuo built it anyway. When Nara Dreamland opened in 1961, 6 years after Disneyland, it was a strikingly close copy. The main street, the castle, the mountain, the monorail, a Jungle Cruise-style ride. Since he couldn't use Disney's characters, he simply invented his own mascots and stood them at the gate. For 2 decades, it worked. At its peak, more than 1.6 million people came through every year. It was somebody's childhood, a real and beloved place. Then the real Disney arrived. Tokyo Disneyland opened in 1983, and next to the genuine article, Dreamland looked like a faded photocopy. Attendance bled away, down toward 1 million, then toward 400,000. After Tokyo DisneySea and Universal Studios Japan both opened in 2001, there was no contest left. In 2006, after 45 years, Nara Dreamland closed. And here is the part that lingers. The owners did not sell off the rides or scrap the place. They strung up barbed wire, hired guards, and locked it. For 10 years, the entire bootleg Disneyland sat behind that fence, complete and rotting, while the world quietly discovered it. Demolition finally came in 2016 and finished at the end of 2017. A copy of the happiest place on earth, kept under guard so that no one could enjoy it, and then erased so completely that you would never know it had once stood there, dreaming. 7 parks scattered across the globe, all chasing the same blueprint, and every one of them gone. For me, the one that stays is Nara Dreamland, a whole Disneyland locked behind a fence for a decade so that no one could enjoy it. That image does not leave. Which of these surprised you most, and which failed park did we miss? Tell me in the comments. And if you like walking through the places the world abandoned, subscribe. We find a new one every week.